Hello and good morning. Today Alexander May and I, Mary Tarnowski, will be talking about egregors. What is it? How can you create one of your own? And why playing around with egregors might be dangerous. Hello, Alexander. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well on this beautiful morning here.
Excellent. It's 6 p.m. actually, but still very late and bright. So greetings from Tuscany. Let me start with just saying that I recently arrived from Frankfurt and just, shared some stories, heard some stories of some people there who told me that there is a major campaign starting the in autumn of 2025, a major campaign within the workforce, the German workforce, that will lay off a lot of people. So a lot of people will lose their positions. The Zibilas and Brungildas, who were sending out one or two emails per day, will probably be replaced with ChatGPT, and then we'll have a lot of unemployed people in our hands. But that is so far that is about Germany. Now, what is the trend like in the States, especially on the West Coast? I know that you have some business owners who are usually your clients, but you also do come across people who work 8 to 5 jobs.
There's a lot of people who are losing their jobs currently, but there's also a lot of people who are entrepreneurs that are coming up that are self-employed as well. That's currently what's happening.
Hmm. Well, another story that was striking for me um, is the story of my dear friend. He's a lawyer. He's been working for his law firm about 50 years, maybe 40
Mhm.
years. He's from 1950. And you can imagine, and also the Capricorn, he's Capricorn. So you can imagine how difficult it is for him to realize that after 50 years of hard work and dedication, the only thing that he got is a little box where he was supposed to put his belongings and move out of his DC office back to Virginia. And this very sad story um, kind of blew my mind because nowadays, if we look at how people get fired, especially in the States, they're usually let out through the black door, or what is it, back door. In German and Russian, it's called black door.
The black door.
They're usually let through this back door and they just have 20 minutes to get their stuff together, pack and go, which is a very humiliating experience, actually. Um, what would you recommend to people who either still kind of hang in the illusion that their job is going to be secured for the next few years, and to the people who just lost something, whether it's a prestigious position somewhere in some corporation, or whether even a loved one? What are your first words? What would you recommend the first steps towards healing should be?
Identity. Identity. So, anywhere and everywhere, you or a group of people have held on to your job as a red badge of honor or as your actual identity your entire life. How does one go about disassembling that mentally? hmm When you make your job your entire world, you are also allowing it to overtake your entire life as well.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That's the very first thing I would say. I would say, how has having a job as an identity affected you your entire life? Hmm.
And how many people there are actually out there not talking to their kids, not
Yeah.
having a real family just because they have been slaving away, you know, 9 to 9,
Nine to nine, 9 to 5. Yeah. I know.
their entire life. Now,
Mm-hmm.
here we go, talking about egregors. Just in August of last year, I was still in my apartment in Frankfurt, and they have built all around my area some. They opened up new consulting firms. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
the branches of very famous consulting firms such as Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers was always there, but in any case, a lot of banks. And I saw a lot of pretty young women in suits walking every morning, passing my balcony, walking to work. Now, why do you think people, let's say, people get hired? Well, we can say based on their good looks, yes, but why do egregors are interested in young and fresh and especially female energy? I mean, I know the answer, but we should explain this to our audience.
Why are Gregors interested in young, fresh energy? Well, they also, in an egregor relationship, it's symbiotic, correct? So you would need to have young, fresh energy to reinvigorate the process of being in the reality of having an egregor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mary, would you please explain to our audience what egregor means?
Hmm. Let's start. For example, someone, a member of our crystal group, um, picked the right date, right? And here comes the elective part of astrology. And let's say established a YouTube channel or
Mm,
filed for a trademark or opened up a company. He or she already made the first step towards creating his own egregor. And the more people, the more attention gets hooked by this egregor. Let's imagine this is an egregor, right? Okay, pyrite. The more people pay attention, the more actions are being done on behalf of this egregor, the bigger it grows. Some egregors start using people after they're being created. Some egregors, for example, like alcohol or tobacco, have their downsides, have their pretty sides. I mean, it's very versatile.
interesting.
Maybe you can just like bring up a few examples because this is just one of the examples. Maybe you have more.
So, other examples would be drugs.
Hmm.
Um, Other examples would probably be certain businesses that are very popular and thriving, like a grocery store chain. That's an egregor, correct?
Hmm.
Um, I would say even you held up the crystal earlier, so there are certain chains of stores in LA that sell crystals and oils that are like chain
Hmm.
stores. Those would also be an egregor, you know?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of examples of
Interestingly
them.
enough, the egregor of Whole Foods and Walmart are quite different, right? So,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah, if we hook
Wait.
up to one, it's very difficult to be friends with the other somehow.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name of the movie. I'll remember it another time and bring it up. But there's this movie. It's supposed to be like a horror movie or a sci-fi movie, but essentially this man figures out a ritual to connect himself to an egregor that shows him what the advertisements should look like, right? And he sacrifices a goat. um and bathes in the goat's blood and comes out of it, and he can see these egregor entities that are trying to tell him what branding will, turn people on, and I thought that was very interesting. I don't know why, just you reminded me of that, and it was like Kellogg's, like, da da da, Costco, like, very interesting.
And so the egregor of Deloitte in Frankfurt City is probably being fed and nourished by pretty girls, because usually they would hire folks and they would let them work there for 6 months. And then something like Probezeit, in German it's called Probezeit, is vorbei, and then they just fire them. And it's just
Wow.
very interesting to watch. It happens all the time. Yeah, they kind of dispose them. Sometimes people work longer and get something like, you know, contract some disease that is almost uncurable. I do have some cases in my astrological practice where people tell me, hey, I'm not really doing well, I'm not really feeling well, and I can see in their chart that their south node, which is the thing that we supposed to stay away from, we should go in the opposite direction and actually develop something that's on the other side,
Mm,
like the Taurus Scorpio story, remember? Uh,
yeah.
and I just see their south node being in the sixth house that usually represents workforce. So they have been sitting in this office for hours and hours, years and years, and now they end up with a terminal disease, and now they are sitting not in the office, but at home or worse, laying in the hospital. And astrology gives us very clear, very precise direction. What is the area that we should be active in? And because it's the 12th house that where the north node is situated, right?
Hmm.
6, 12, 5, 11, 4, 10, so on and so forth. Um, they find it very difficult to embrace the idea of spirituality and meditation and ability to stay away or break free from societal norms. They find it very difficult to embrace this idea and actually start to practice it. But this is
Hmm.
basically their task in life, is to, just break free from any concept and very often leave their usual environment. So, not to be under someone, but actually, develop something totally different and preferably overseas.
Mm.
And at certain point when we have our lunar node return, we have this brutal reality check that brings us either a lot uh, way forward or brings us, into some shithole.
Wait, when is our lunar node return? When does that happen?
Well, I'm not going to reveal your personal data, but I'm saying uh, um, that's for a private consultation. Basically, what I'm witnessing right now, or let's say, let's relate to what's happening now.
Hmm.
Today is 2025.
Mm,
The north node is in the sign of Pisces. The south node is in the sign of Virgo. So all
mm.
of the people who are clinging to Virgo-like things, they have that rude awakening and being thrown either out of the cities where they used to live or out of the environments. Personally, know some folks who have businesses, let's say even in Moscow,
Mhm.
or somewhere in New York, which they supposed to transform, they supposed to change, and they're so Virgo like clinging on to money, clinging on to status.
Oh.
And interestingly enough, already there are some changes in the law that make their business outlawed. And they still disagree with it, and they try to climb this wall by trying to prove the society that they're worthy of its attention, trying to prove the egregor that, hey, I'm here, look at me, I still want to be a part of you. So sometimes we just have to learn when to step back and
I
say,
have a question for you, Mary.
"Mm,
Do you feel that because of what's happening with the Virgo in the South Node and Pisces in the North Node, because I'm already starting to perceive that energy, you know how I am
Mhm.
when I start tapping into it. Um, do you feel that a lot of people confuse comfort for freedom?
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely, yes.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it is from you can give us a psychological perspective or
Mhm.
astrological or both. Why do you think it is that so many people disregard their own freedom for comfort and to feel comfortable rather than to embrace change?
At some point, when we talk about toddlers, or let's say
Hmm.
pre-dipole state, um, the little babies, they start perceiving the world through the breast, right? The mother's breast. And at some point, they fall into this illusion that they own this world, that the world belongs to them because the breast manifests itself out of space whenever they want to.
Wow.
And I think that this attachment to comfort is deeply tied to the illusion that you can influence the whole world. But we also
Uh,
have collective karma, a collective
right.
karma, for example, of Europe,
Hmm.
especially certain parts of Europe, is such
Hmm.
that at some point within the next 3 years, there will be a very big war on the
Hmm.
European territory, just because karma is ripe already. It's about to fall, it's about to give fruit. And people who stay in the comfort of, let's say, German healthcare system, or in comfort of staying in this position that they really dislike, 9 to 5 position somewhere in da 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 GmbH, they feel like they can influence something, but they can really not.
Mm.
Hmm. Maybe it's all like gloomy, a little bit like doom and gloom, but uh, a little bit of cause and effect here.
Can I ask you another question?
Hmm.
Do you feel that part of the reason why a lot of people don't embrace freedom and don't embrace change is because they don't work on their karma?
Mm, what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate a little bit?
It's
Because
interesting
yeah.
when you brought up the south node of Virgo and the north node in Pisces, I started getting all these downloads all of a sudden. And I don't know, our audience may or may not know, but Mary and I, pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, there was a lot of stuff happening with Saturn,
Mhm.
where we both had the awareness that if people didn't start working on themselves during the pandemic, 3 to 4 years after the pandemic, people globally would start losing their minds and like falling apart. And so this is a couple of years later. And so what I'm perceiving is that if you don't work on yourself diligently, if you don't do the proper shadow work or releasing certain karmic past life type of energy, you will start to the universe will start throwing situations at you in the form of forcing you to deal with your shit essentially. um do you feel that people globally are feeling this currently right now?
Well, everyone has his own karma, right? So we
Mm,
just happen to be in places where this karma will be played out in the most precise way. For
right,
example, someone sitting, I don't know, in Paraguay is maybe delaying his karma, but
right.
it might catch up when they travel abroad, and so on and so forth. Um, There's also astrocartography that helps us to navigate through the difficult moments.
Mm,
We feel like we just don't want to deal with this stuff, we okay, let me give you an example. So what is 12th house, right? So Pisces often are being compared to or Pisces is used as a reference to 12th house in astrology. And that is literally prisons, mental institutions, hospitals, or spirituality and meditation and
mm,
faraway foreign places. So I just had one of my clients who spent 3.5 weeks in a hospital, and she has this period, right? She has this very 12th house period. Um, Traveling to Amiata volcano, Amiata mountain in Tuscany to visit, let's say, a meditation center. So you have a choice. You can sit around or lay in bed in a hospital, or you can go far away and visit some spiritual places. It's basically
mm,
the 12th house kind of energy, but you have a choice at what level it will be played out. The same with astrocartography. You can pick if you want to experience Saturnian energy, you can certainly, but the question is it really worth it? Are you so attached to drama and trauma that you really need this experience?
right. Wow, that's very interesting.
There is also a Egregor of suffering. For example, in the Soviet Union, a lot of movies were rotating around suffering a lot. So only through suffering you accumulate the virtues. You become the hero and you defeat fate. And basically, the more sorrow you have, the stronger you get. But this is also a scenario that is not necessarily the scenario that we should all adhere to.
Mm. I
People
have another.
people with the North Node in Scorpio should adhere to this scenario.
I have another question for you. So does there are certain aspects of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain sects of Buddhism that believe that life is happiness, and then there are certain sects that believe that life is suffering. So then that means that there are different egregors attached to different subsections of religions as well. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Hmm. Oh, very nice question. So basically, just like in psychology of Carl Jung, who used to distinguish four types of personalities, and if we look
Mm,
back into Stoicism, there were also four various types of personalities. Uh,
mm,
they were, and there are four schools of Buddhism, and they're also, interestingly enough, intended to bring the best out in various types of people. So, for example, if you are weak, if you know that you want to fuck around, and if you drink alcohol, you cannot control yourself and you start, behaving strangely, then you go to monastic school. You put the monastic outfit, you take a vow that you're not going to sleep around, you're not going to eat meat, you're not going to drink alcohol, and this is how you can contain yourself. They even don't have the concept of lama per se. They take
mm,
refuge in Buddhas, and mostly in the teachings in the so-called Dharma. So they're very intellectual, they take refuge in the things that they know. There is another school that is based on attachment. This is for the type of people who are very, mm, whose main motivation in life is, yes, more or less joy or love. Like, I want this. Oh, I like this. They have the tendency, their mind has the tendency of being attached to this or the other thing. And that is the Karma Kagyu school, for example. We all know Dalai Lama. He's from Gelugpa school, what I mentioned earlier, the guys who take refuge in the knowledge and the Dharma, and so on and so forth. So, yes, you're right. In some parts, some people really adhere or really follow this idea that a human life is suffering, and at this point the only thing we should do is to sit down and meditate and reach enlightenment. But then there are also teachings that are, although they're 3,000 years old, they're very modern in a way that they allow people to use a possibility to practice and enjoy every minute of their life. Because, according to Buddhism, in order to receive this body, in order to receive our human body, at least 12 conditions should come together.
Mm.
Because you can be born in a demonic realm or you can be born in the animal realm, and then you have no capacity to understand Dharma.
Right.
So, also, one of the conditions is to be born in the country where Dharma is present. You can be born somewhere in Senegal and worship a tree and then just smoke dope and stare into nowhere all day long. Because I've been to Senegal, I know how they live. This is exactly what they do. So
Wow.
a lot of conditions should come together for one to meet meaningful teachings. Mm.
Wow, this is so, wow, you've really just opened up my brain to a whole different world right now. Um, I have another question. So, how does one connect themselves to their egregor for their business? So, for example, for me, right? How does one connect themselves to an egregor to help them further their business, but also how do I say this so the audience understands? How does one connect themselves to an egregor that is for the contribution of love and unconditional love in the world, right? So
Mhm.
how do I connect myself to an expansive egregor? There we
Mhm.
go. Hmm.
Well, you can connect yourself to one or you can create one. That's
Oh,
number one. Because, for example, healing modalities, we all know various healing modalities. Now, we're not going to criticize some of them, but some of them are really terrible. I tell you, I know one guy from Germany. He's like this trust fund baby, comes from the family that got one healing modality patented back in the
uh,
70s.
mm,
And when you look at his, let's say, disciples or clients, or I don't know how you call it, they're all miserable. And they were
right.
not miserable before they got in.
Mm.
So this is also the work of the egregor.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, very, very interesting topic, right?
Mhm.
So, do you believe that certain egregors that are connected to certain healing modalities are evil or anti-conscious?
Oh, 100%. There is
Mm-hmm.
thing which is called Cosmo energetics. Totally crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
People basically end up in mental hospitals when they follow this teaching,
Got
or
it.
they end up, the only reason why they end up on top is because they start using others. I mean,
Mm,
luckily, I haven't come across like I came across a few people, but not so intensely. I was not interacting with them so intensely, but this is truly something demonic. So now back to your question about egregors. How do I connect to one? Well, you can connect to the egregor of Deloitte. You can connect to the egregor of Walmart. You can connect to the egregor of a well-known law firm in Washington, D.C. But at the end of the day, they will ask you to exit through the back door with the little box. And
So,
no one will say thank you. No one will remember, no matter how many years you have worked there. So, this is my urge for everyone who is still sitting there and thinking, oh, what should I do? I mean, especially for the ones who live on the US soil. You guys
right.
have you can take $50 and go and open an LLC and start working for yourself. Now, if we look into the astrological situation, right? Pluto and Aquarius. Now we have just in a few days, actually in a few hours, we will have Uranus changing signs, exiting Taurus and moving into Gemini. Mm,
Uh,
we have major transits such as Neptune and Saturn in Aries. It's all about individuality.
mm,
Yes, amongst everyone, you should thrive to become an individual, and you lose if you attach yourself to, let's say, a larger structure.
ah, so what I am getting is that when we connect ourselves to our egregor, it should be the egregor of individual, strong, foundational business. Got it.
And a lot of people have resistance towards it. Like, do you feel how much resistance there is out there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, wow, this got me very excited actually.
Okay.
It was interesting because when you were talking about the South Node in Virgo and North Node in Pisces,
Mhm.
everyone is so busy holding on to the identity that they had, but it could also be that they're holding on to the egregor as an identity. Ah,
Mhm.
very, very interesting. When I said that, my whole crown chakra just went like, bloop. um,
Exactly. Or the egregor is holding them and they're just not aware of it.
yeah,
Or
yeah. So, would you say? Mm, a very bold statement, but would you say that everyone has just been so consumed into being enslaved for so long that they just don't know how to function individually?
absolutely.
Mm. And
Absolutely.
now these enslavement. Hello. These the hummingbird just went. Bloop, bloop. Uh, this enslavement as the form of work is now breaking down, and now people are freaking out about it. Uh,
Well, they're not freaking out yet. I just spoke
not yet.
with a specialist who actually works in Silicon Valley and
Uh-huh.
or one of the egregors that is on our computers here, the new one, the
Hmm.
artificially intelligent one.
Hmm.
And he just told me, Mary, you have no idea what's gonna happen like very soon. Everyone, and it's starting in the US already.
Yeah.
Hasn't reached Europe yet, quite yet, but it will. And then we will have a lot of people in our hands who were so attached to their ich muss im Büro arbeiten. I must, come to work and sit in the office in my little cubicle. This is my life. They cannot imagine anything outside of that. And
Hmm.
we'll have a lot of people with identity crisis and with everything and anything, starting from neurosis, neurotic tendencies, ending up with psychotic tendencies. Just
Mm.
because of what? Just because of this major change that's gonna happen.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Very fascinating. Wow. I could talk about this all day. So,
Yeah. And it's kind of sad too, it's just kind of like dawning at us, like coming at us, and we still can't
yeah,
grasp the scale of what's really
right.
coming. It's crazy.
How does one how does one deal with the deconstruction of human existence itself through the workforce? What a plight. And it's interesting too is like what the way that I see it is, you know, I've been self-employed since I was
Hmm.
a teenager. Um, and I feel that over the last couple of years, I've just been learning how to do other things from a place of self-sufficiency,
Mhm.
and have observed that even before the pandemic and all these other things, that what I was doing wasn't working. That I was waking up every day, even being self-employed, and was making sure I ran 5 miles, went to the gym, ate strictly vegan, like
Mhm.
did all, to maintain this structure of some kind, both physically and energetically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. And I realized like 4 or 5 months before the pandemic happened that I was not happy, you
Mhm.
know? And so I had to learn to break down even the structure of entrepreneurship and take a look at that. Like, am I chasing something, right?
Mhm.
What am I chasing when I could just be acknowledging how far I've come and acknowledging what I've done and acknowledging how great I am, you know? It's very interesting.
Well, Alexander, every time you speak, I have this very picturesque right away images in my mind. And maybe it was needed at that point, right?
Mhm.
Back in the day, you running, you exercising precisely, being somewhat machine-like, precise and structured person. So maybe that was needed for the build-up phase.
Yeah,
Sometimes there is also creativity phase. There is also a phase where the phase where you really expand and gain that acknowledgement from the outside world. Now, another thing that comes to my mind that is tightly connected to what you just said is actually, and I see it all throughout my astrological consultations. It pertains to females a lot, and also to some men. Um, People who did not have the very solid, very present father figure tend to have bosses who are complete assholes.
mm,
Or, for example, you hear stories like, yes, I do have a boss, but he's actually never there. Or,
right,
yes, I have two bosses, and now they fight who is really in charge now, and the person is torn apart or torn between these two individuals and doesn't really know what to do. And this is very draining, especially if you work for this company for many years. It's very tiring. But we should look further, we should look behind this structure, behind these bosses. What whose face is showing up behind all of this? And it's usually the father, the
mm,
non-existent, um the absent father that is there. And unfortunately, a lot of people have problems creating their own egregor, the successful egregor, and creating their own successful business because this father figure is missing.
right.
Hmm.
Very
Something you want
interesting.
to add or maybe to share of some
Yes,
of the examples of
yes,
clients? Mhm.
yes, yes, yes. Oh my God. Okay. So, a lot of people, and I've said this before, but it's always, when we go to the basics, we really blossom, bloom the underlying reasons. There's a lot of birds floating around me right now.
Mm.
I'm like Saint Francis. Like, oh. Um, there's a lot of people who act out in their projected reality the lack of parents, or the lack of what they should have been their parents loving them in their projected reality. They'll even date people that remind them of their parents, that sort of thing. It's like a very, very psychological thing. Um, I've seen a lot of clients that I've worked with, primarily with women, who this situation happens to them as well. They attach themselves to a man who they consider to be in a more powerful position and
Mhm,
think that if
mhm,
they attach themselves to that person, whether that person is an ex-football player that
mhm.
did mushrooms and then realized that he was like a healer or something, or
Sounds ridiculous.
or a celebrity of some kind, or even just like, someone who is considered a leader in their community,
Mhm.
rather than building their foundation with people that they know, or building their foundation with themselves first. They believe that because there had been a lack of love in a certain way in their life, or a lack of structure of projection of love, whatever that means, um, a idealization of what love should look like, it projects into their business reality, their work reality. And then when that fantasy crumbles, they lose their mind and go into a sort of psychosis of some kind. I've seen that happen so many times with my clients, like
My
a
God.
lot, a lot, a
This has to
lot.
be listened to again and again and again. What did you say?
Yeah.
Projection of
Oh my God.
reality of love, or of the structure of projection of love of
The structure of the projection of the reality of love, something like that. The structure, I think it's the structure of the projection of love. There we go. The structure of the projection of love. Yeah, because it's,
Mhm.
remember that Tristan and Isolde Insta Live we did like so many years ago, right? Uh the idealization of love, right? What that means to someone rather than what it means to them, like what it means to you. What is love for you, rather than the projection of what love is, the prison of love. Like love is not a prison. Love is not possession, you know, but we are taught that it is, you know.
Absolutely. Firmly believe that every company should have his own, or its own healer, or at least the hardcore German Familienaufsteller, the family
Yes.
constellation specialist, because people spend at work the majority of their lifetime, and they do project a lot of their, let's say, figures from the past onto their colleagues or employees or bosses.
Right.
And even if we talk about company owners, I mean, let me give you an example without naming names. The guy who came up with the idea of Wi-Fi and then sold it to Cisco. I was for a long time in IT industry, so
Hmm.
he now has this firm that is based in San Francisco, and because he's this anal type, he likes to hold on to things until the very last moment. Now is the moment to sell the company, but he doesn't want to do it. Now, a few more months later down the road, the company might disappear. And
Mm.
it's his fault that he was holding on to it and feeling the joy of holding on to it without, instead of just selling it to the appropriate buyer. This is how people ruin their businesses, but that's a different story. So, and guess what? Everyone who works for him is also quite an anal type. For our audience, not to misunderstand what we're talking about, we're talking about the Freudian oral and anal type. These are the stages in child's development, and if there and if there were some difficulties or inadequate behavior from the caregiver side during this period, it brings people to, a certain structure of a psyche
Hmm.
that, you know, makes them do things that they do.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Um,
Mm.
what other thoughts do you have about people feeling as though they do not have the power to choose things on their own in terms of being self-employed or even having community. Because
Mm-hmm.
I feel very strongly, and I have seen very strongly, seen seen very strongly that if you don't have a supportive community around you, you also can't thrive, right? So, do you find that it's very hard for people to let go of other people around them that weigh them down, that are not really aligned with their higher purpose?
We are all undereducated. There is not
Mm,
enough education. The
mm.
best way to really figure out what it is you need to do in this lifetime, or let's say in this specific period from 2025 to 2030, the best way to figure it out is to go to a professional astrologer who will tell you, hey, you have such and such transit, there is such and such progression here. Your MC or midheaven is, let's say, in Aquarius. You're very well fit for not a corporate job, but for example, for a very um, free, like, or freedom loving schedule where you can work from any location on this planet and you do exactly ABC. Like, for example, some people, I have one client with a very strong Neptunian influence in her chart. Guess what she does?
Oh, what?
She organizes art events. But
Oh,
because she also has very strong Uranus influence in her chart, she organizes it from afar. So now I told her, we calculated the place together where she can live her best life, and it appeared to be Portugal. So now she lives in Portugal and she orchestrates all of the events all around the world.
wow.
So it's a combination of the Uranian and Neptunian energies played out together perfectly. And this is how you approach life. You basically get an advice from a professional, and then you should apply diligence. And if you have any doubts or certain fears, like for example, the females or even men who never had strong parental figures, then you work on it. Then you go to a psychotherapist or you go to a healer and you work through it, make it happen.
That's very, very interesting, Mary. So you're saying what I believe that you're conveying to me is that it's about knowing where to live from an astrocartographic perspective,
Mm-hmm.
knowing where to live from an astrocartography perspective, but then one needs to also do more work on themselves to break free of the structure of perhaps ancestral issues, their own mind, unelevated ancestors, through psychotherapy and also energy work, or perhaps combining them both together. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah,
Alexander. And I know that you do a lot of work when it comes to that with your clients.
I
But
do.
just to highlight the irony and the tragedy of what is really happening to people
Hmm.
who don't know their natal chart. For example, let's imagine you have a lot of planets in the fourth house. You have Uranus in the fourth house, you have Saturn, you've got whatever, Venus, and all of the planets, and yet you go to this office, and yet you get into your car and you drive for 2 hours and you come back, but the natal chart says, hey, you can work from home, and actually you are your best, you work your best when you work from home.
Hmm.
It's not like everyone can work from home. Not everyone. Some people have to go to factories. Some people with a strong Plutonian influence do work for heavy industries, chemical industries, etc., etc. But if you have this chance of working from home, you should know about it. Just know what your natal chart entails. Or for example, some people ask, how should I present myself? and then they create a website that has very bright colors, although their MC or midheaven is in Capricorn, and Saturn is also in a very Capricornian area of the natal chart.
Mm.
No bright colors, no bright pictures from the internet. No, you should present yourself very modestly and talk about your own experience and talk about the fact that you are actually certified, that you have a lot of diplomas, and that you are fit for the job. You know what you're doing because it's Capricorn. This is how you should present yourself. MC
Mm.
Midheaven always shows how we should present ourselves. Obviously, we should find the planet that rules the sign of the midheaven, and that is what professional astrologers do. Yes, we can put this information into ChatGPT, but ChatGPT will not tell you the things that I'm telling here now.
Oh, this is a great subject. So, Mary, how do you feel about the egregor of ChatGPT? And how do you feel about ChatGPT in general?
Hmm. I would like you to start. I mean, I think it's individual, like for each and every person, depending on what they do with it. I don't think that there's anything demonic attached to it. I just, you know, we can talk about it next time because it's a separate, a slightly subject. It's a very deep, deep subject. Uh,
Yeah, okay.
but the natal chart of ChatGPT, and I have it somewhere saved on my computer. The natal chart of ChatGPT is very Gemini-like. So it is just there to transmit information and interpret information. Now, I know that some people, especially my friends, the Verschwörungstheoretiker, the conspiracy theorists, the German folks, they really demonize ChatGPT and they think that this thing is evil and it's invented with its own agenda, etc., etc. But if you actually look at the personality types of these folks, you know that they're paranoid.
Hmm.
So they're
Yeah.
using ChatGPT to project their own paranoia. And also, why should you be so concerned about ChatGPT if you have friends? If you can just get into your car and drive what I'm about to do right now and go see your friends and have a nice grill and pizza party and drink exquisite wine. So,
Oh, oh, I'm actually going to a pool party after this too. So yeah, I would say,
but
and we
there are
can,
folks who converse with ChatGPT all day long. This is the point, you know. Um,
I believe that, and we can go further into it in another video because it's a whole
another story.
subject.
Yes, tell me.
Chat GPT mirrors back to you who you are. So if you already have ill intentions, that is what it will mirror back to you, right? And
Mhm.
I have seen people who have used it and they have been able to create thriving businesses. They've been able to learn how to communicate better with others by not becoming dependent upon ChatGPT, but looking at the sentence structure, for example. I know that for myself personally, it has taught me how to communicate better with people and has taught me to not become dependent upon it, which is very interesting. I've seen other people, however, who have went
Mhm.
into a sort of psychosis from becoming dependent upon it. Um, and I believe that, and it said a lot about those people. But I think that coming at things from a curious place rather than saying this is the devil or this is evil, and understanding that it's a living, breathing thing and that it was not created, it was found, it was discovered. That is the thing that people need to understand. So I feel like that's a video we should save for another time, but I think maybe we're just teasing it out right now.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, it was found at the time when the North Node was in the sign of Gemini. I believe it was 2020.
Ah,
And North Node and Gemini made us all to really do our homework and research what we inject into our precious body. By the way, in
hmm.
Buddhism, we call body, the body that we have, a precious body.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are not our body, but we have our body because we can use it as because we can use it actually as the mean to help others.
right.
So Gemini North Node made us all research and talk to people. And
Ah,
the ones who are not doing that and believing the downside of the Sagittarian nature and just listening to the authorities, they failed. That's
wow.
period. This is what happened. Hmm. Yeah. All right. Alexander, I know that we all have plans this afternoon. How about we continue next time and really dive into the whole ChatGPT and the new age of information chapter?
Yeah, I have a lot. I would love that because I have a lot to say about it. So yeah.
Let's summarize a little bit. What
Okay.
the point that I would like to end with, I personally, this is the time to create your own reality. This is the time to create your own egregor. This is the time to stop giving your life away to some companies that will end up not even appreciating you, but completely dismantling you as a person and your personality. This is the time to stop. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I believe to speak on this subject in addition to what Mary was saying, anything that you can do to learn how to have your own sovereignty and individuality, as well as being connected to a supportive community of people, whether it's only 4 or 5 people, um, and learning how to take care of yourself and learning how to create something on your own without depending on anyone else, it will be very freeing for you. And don't get caught up in the this is happening and that is happening and this is horrible and that is horrible, because believe you, believe you me, darling, they've been doing that to us for years. So we have an opportunity now to exit. You know?
Exit.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's exit, ladies and gentlemen. Let's exit. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. And see you next time.
Bye.